Story 3. The air tasted like aluminum and ozone. We were parked 5 miles east of the 54 overpass, Kansas, waiting for the mesocyclone to tighten. My partner, Jen, was white-knuckled on the dash cam, but I was focused solely on the laptop screen, the radar feed glowing sickly green in the oppressive twilight of the truck cab. The hook echo was perfect, textbook geometry for an EF4+, but the velocity data was wrong. "Look at the sheer value of that couplet, Jen," I mumbled, tapping the screen. "It's registering 180 knots rotational velocity at 1,500 feet AGL. That's absurd. And the CC, the correlation coefficient, is 0. Absolute 0. "So it's rotating that fast, but hitting nothing?" Jen whispered. "It's rotating that fast, but scattering no physical debris yet. It's like the wind itself is spinning, untouched." A moment later, the sky opened up. Not rain, but a sudden dense curtain of hail the size of golf balls, sounding like 100 hammers striking the roof of the armored truck. The world outside turned a toxic, sickly shade of jade. Then, the sirens started. Not the distant, mournful howl of a town siren, but the immediate warped scream of the industrial one directly across the fields. It sounded too close, too loud, vibrating the dashboard, a panicked, metallic bleating announcing inevitable destruction. I slammed the truck into drive, accelerating hard down the deserted county road, aiming for the perfect intercept position. The hail stopped instantly. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. In the sudden, blinding flash of a distant lightning strike, I saw it. It wasn't a funnel. Not yet. It was a churning column of blackness, broader than any tornado I'd ever chased, tearing the red dirt immediately beneath its base. But floating beneath the ragged, boiling wall cloud, just above the ground scour, was something tall. It was impossibly thin, a stretched skeletal silhouette against the swirling darkness. It didn't move with the wind. It listed against it. It was too tall to be a person, too defined to be a debris chute. It looked like a figure, motionless and upright, observing. Jen gasped, a strangled sound of utter disbelief. "What is that? Alex, what is that?" I pulled the vehicle to a screeching halt, grabbing the 4K camera. My hands were shaking so violently I couldn't steady the lens. The figure remained, a static, unmoving blot in the dynamic chaos of the supercell's heart. It didn't belong to physics. It belonged to something else entirely. The wind hit us then, a colossal physical shove that rattled the truck's frame and blew out the driver's side window shield with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Through the new gap, I heard a sound that was not the siren, and not the roar of the wind. It was a resonant, low-frequency hum, deep in the chest, the sound of unimaginable pressure vibrating against bone. It felt less like sound, and more like a warning, a pulse of dark energy radiating from the tall shadow. I didn't wait for the camera to focus. I threw the truck into reverse, blindingly fast, leaving the scientific pursuit behind. The horror wasn't the tornado itself. The horror was that thing standing at its core, utterly indifferent to the rotational forces that should have shredded it. It knew we were watching, and it was waiting for the perfect wind to deliver it. I drove until the humming stopped, and the green light of the radar screen felt like the only safe thing left in the world. I still have the footage. The shadow figure is there, indelible, and the data registers impossible rotation. But when I play the audio, the terrifying hum is gone. Just static. Whatever it was, it didn't want to be recorded, only glimpsed and remembered. Story 2. 300 miles out, the world shrinks to a steel deck and the endless black water. It was the third night of our run, and the Pacific was flat and oily, reflecting the few distant stars like scattered diamond dust. Just me and Mitch on the ocean's fury, a ghost in the vastness, pulling up swordfish from depths that humanity had no business disturbing. That's when the light appeared. Not a ship, not a satellite. Too deep, too steady. A pinprick of emerald green, almost directly below us, pulsing with its own cold, internal rhythm. Mitch, nursing a mug of coffee, just grunted. "Submarine, probably. Or some deep-sea drone." But submarines don't hover still for an hour, 300 miles from anywhere, 70 fathoms down, and they don't pulse with that unsettling biological glow. Then came the sound. It started as a low thrum, a vibration that resonated less in my ears and more in my bones. It felt less heard and more felt, like the ocean itself was slowly turning over, sighing. Mitch heard it too this time. His eyes met mine, wide. "Engine's fine," he muttered, checking the gauges for the 10th time. But it wasn't our engine. It was coming from below, from where the green light still pulsed, faintly visible through the water's inky surface. The radio crackled then, almost a relief from the awful hum, but it brought its own chill. Another vessel, the Sea Serpent, had vanished without a trace 5 days ago, right around these coordinates. Last transmission. Garbled, a panicked scream cut short. No wreckage, no oil slick, just silence. The green light began to move. Not fast, not erratic, but with an unnerving, deliberate slowness. It began to circle us, its immense unseen source passing beneath our hull, the hum intensifying until it vibrated in my teeth. The water around us shifted, not from a current, but from some colossal displacement far below. Then, a flicker. High on the starboard side, at the very edge of our deck light's reach, something broke the surface. Not a whale, not a shark. Too smooth, too dark. It was a slick, impossibly long mass, reflecting no light, absorbing it. It had no fins, no discernible head, just a seamless, oily blackness that curved out of the water like a monstrous living rope, then slid back down without a splash. Silent. Mitch dropped his coffee. It shattered on the deck, the hot liquid steaming. He didn't even notice. His gaze was fixed on the spot where the thing had surfaced. The green light was gone. The thrumming had stopped. The ocean was silent again, save for the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull. We didn't talk much after that, just pulled our lines, the nets feeling heavier than usual, like they dragged something vast and unwilling from the deep. We hauled in our quota, mechanically, like automatons. The next morning, the sun rose, painting the water in blinding golds and oranges, washing away the horrors of the night. But it didn't wash away the feeling. We were heading back, but the ocean felt different now. Colder, deeper, and filled with a silent, waiting dread from which we had only temporarily escaped. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the Sea Serpent hadn't just vanished, it had been taken. Story 3. The hum of the Sea Dog's engine was the only comfort against the vast, inky blackness that pressed in on us. 3 days out, miles from any land, we were chasing a rumor of a deep-sea tuna run. The air was thick with salt, and a gnawing anticipation, not just for a good haul, but for something more. We were a small crew, 4 of us, men who knew the ocean's moods but rarely its true depths. It started subtly, a flicker at the edge of our powerful deck lights, too quick to be a wave, too random to be equipment malfunction. Then, the lights themselves began to behave strangely. They'd pulse, dimming and brightening in an unsettling syncopation, as if something were breathing them in and out. Old Man Hemlock, our captain, a man who'd seen decades of weather and worse, just grunted and fiddled with the generator, his knuckles white. That night, the sea was a mirror under a starless sky. Then, a glow. Not like moonlight, but an internal luminescence, rising from the abyss. It was a pale, ethereal blue, expanding outwards from beneath the hull. It wasn't a bioluminescent bloom we recognized. This was too large, too deliberate. It cast grotesque shadows on the waves, making them writhe like living things. Then came the sound. A low, resonant thrumming, felt more than heard, vibrating through the soles of our boots and into our bones. It was a sound that had no business existing in the natural world, a guttural lament that seemed to scrape against the very fabric of reality. The fish we'd been trolling for, the sardines, the squid bait, they vanished. The ocean around us went dead silent, save for that unholy vibration. Suddenly, something broke the surface. It was immense, a silhouette against the unnatural blue light that defied any description. Not a whale. It was too angular, too alien. It had a series of bulbous protrusions along its back, and as it submerged with a silent, terrifying grace, it left behind a wake that glowed with that same sickly blue. We never saw it clearly, and I thank God for that. But we saw enough. Enough to know that we weren't alone out here, and that the deep held things that were never meant to surface. The next morning the sea was calm, the lights were steady, and the engine hummed its familiar tune. But the silence from the depths, the memory of that sound and that light, would haunt us forever. One of the baits, a heavy-duty tuna lure, was found lodged in the hull, bent into an impossible twisted shape that no pressure, no known creature, could inflict. We turned back then, leaving the tuna run for another day, or perhaps for good. The ocean felt older and infinitely more dangerous than it had before.